Well, here we are near the end of the farm road, and we are passing our gymnasium, which is tongue-in-cheek. We have just one or two machines in it, but it was originally started as a storage room for the garden, and we got a little carried away. What you see here is a rather unusual combination of 10% hemlock cut very thin and then given 2 or 3 coats of Sickens stain, and even on the roof, if you'll notice, it's also hemlock strips, and those were put on top of a regular backing so that it looks like it's a log cabin when really it's only a veneer of hemlock. Hemlocks have died throughout this area, and so there are a lot of hemlocks to be creative with. But you can see a little bit closer up here what was done. And on the door, same thing, just it's a veneer of hemlock. Been very pleased with it. I wish we could use it more than we have. It's just that when you're working at the garden, it's very difficult to find the time to exercise when you put so much exercise into the garden. It's hard to get up here to exercise on the machines. Now as you look around, you'll see the mountains. They are nestling, giving us an area that is nestled between all of the slopes here of the Smokies at this elevation here around 2,900 feet, and the garden below, which you can see from this view. There's the gate to the garden we'll walk through in just a minute, is 50 feet below us. Temperatures range year-round. Usually never hotter than 85 here, even though it may get up to 90 degrees in Asheville, which is our nearest city. And it drops down into the 50s and 60s in the evening, depending on what part of the summer. We're in the middle of the summer right now. This is a road that takes us back up to the house, and an exit road for bringing in all of the garden supplies from Lowe's. Trying to walk softly, but it's really hard. Makes a lot of noise, and it's hard to give you a perspective of walking down to the gate unless I do this the way I'm doing it. My apologies in advance for a little bit of the shakiness. But as you see, we're coming up on the garden. There are 2 levels to the garden, the upper level and the lower level. The upper level are primarily vegetables with some marigolds in order to keep off the bugs. And then as I come through the gate, I'll turn around and show you a view of the lower garden. This had originally been cleared by Habitat of the Humanities, or for the Humanities, and it was going to be a home. In fact, 2 homes, Habitat homes, and there was a problem with the way they landscaped it, and as a result they sold it. Here we have a little bit of the artistry in the vegetable garden. And you see a weeping birch. It's a beautiful tree. It's a paper bark birch. The owl watches over everything in the garden, and I'm sure it scares away most of the varmints. We haven't had a problem with them so far. There are 18 cedar beds, raised beds, and throughout this area we have pine bark mulch from Lowe's, or I should say pine bark mini nuggets from Lowe's. There's some mulch in there, but mainly mini nuggets. And the cedar beds came from a company with the name Green, G-R-E-E-N-E, I believe in it. Cedar beds, they're 4x8. Then we have 6 in the lower garden, which house the flowers. But let's start off and give you an overview here of the plants that are in the garden. Here we have a herb garden. You probably recognize the dill and the parsley. You see the basil seems to be very healthy. In the back you see eggplant, which should be having some eggplant in the next few days because we see the yellow flowers. And then there's thyme, rosemary also in that garden. Here we have another raised bed, but primarily tomatoes and marigolds. And you can see in the bed next to it that the tomatoes are doing extremely well. Coming around, you can see the cherry tomatoes. Oh, it's so hard to resist these. They are a delicious snack. Now this is what you call pumpkins gone crazy. They're going to climb up the fence. And we don't see any pumpkins yet. But I will say in the next week or so you will see little orange pumpkins showing up. This is one of my favorite greens. It's called an Oriental green, and it's sold by Burpee, and it's a hybrid. And it grows so quickly. This was only planted about 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks to 3 weeks ago. And it keeps growing, and when you trim the outside leaves, you can just keep eating the Oriental greens throughout the entire summer into early fall. Here we have some strawberries, which I transplanted to keep this bed a little active. I planted spinach here, and it should be coming up any day now. So far I see no little sprouts. This is the only story that I can tell you that has a sad ending in this garden. The worms ate the kale. They seem to love the kale much more than human beings do. And as a result, I just let the worms have the kale in hopes they just stay right there. So far it's been a fairly good strategy. The marigold has not helped keep those bugs off. We did get a couple of loads of kale, but the bugs then got to it. the worms. Here again we see another bed of marigolds and oriental greens. From this view you can see the mountains a lot better around us. In fact, I'm wondering whether we're going to get rained out here. This is more of a rainforest on this side of the Smokies. It's quite a bit of rain. In fact, I can hear it coming. This is the strawberries. Here we have beets. And we've already pulled quite a few out of the beets out of there. Here we have green beans. Let's see if we can get a nice picture of a green bean in there. You can see it back in the back. There's one. More green beans. These are watermelons and cantaloupes. Here's a cantaloupe. And then here is a watermelon. Then the squash are really healthy. I think I need to pick those squash. They're a little too big for me. In the back of the garden is my wife's whimsical garden that has all the mirror trees. You can imagine in the sunlight how these reflect beautifully so. The trees are actually upside down, topsy-turvy tomato planters, where we took off the top of them, switched them around, and you see the hanging arms are actually the stand. We hated to waste these topsy-turvies. Topsy-turvy didn't work very well at all, and I don't recommend it to anyone. We got the very big ones, but they still kept drying out so quickly. And then they held their water at the bottom and created some type of rot. I'm hoping this rain will stop. It usually does. Here from the back you can see a better view of the mirror garden. Here you have a heart garden with a lot of ice plant, some roses. And some wire mannequins. These gardens, there are 6 gardens of flowers, mainly perennials. Coreopsis, I guess, is found mainly in this garden. And in the back you have your coral flame phlox. Calabracho. Some more phlox in the very back. Coreopsis again. Some more perennials. That card says Holopsis. The hummingbirds and butterflies love this area, so this is our butterfly and hummingbird garden area. I believe this is fuchsia. Hasn't started blooming yet. The bottle tree. Lavender. More fuchsia, I believe. Form of mint, which is for the hummingbirds. They call it agastacia. Little bumblebee. We have quite a few of those. On the frame of our gazebo is, or I should say are, a number of different types of grapes. In the next year or so, those should start to show up. Usually takes a few years. Here we have asparagus. These pine trees have just grown wild. It's amazing how they're coming back to make up for the loss of the hemlocks. Well, like I thought, the rain did stop. A little bit of a slope here. You can imagine hauling all the bark back and forth is quite an exercise. Well, one area I haven't pointed out is our totem, and it's a totem that I made by throwing each one of these pieces individually, and each one of those are a different type of glaze. Boy, it's interesting. The rain is only a few hundred yards away and it's really heavy, so that means it's coming to us. Maybe you can hear it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this trip through the Smoky Mountains and our gardens. Thank you for allowing me to share them with you.